Welcome to episode 416 of the Corner of Knit and Tea. My name is Laura. I'm also known as Fluffy Kira on Instagram and Twitter. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, and that's where every episode's show notes will be, including this one. And I have an Etsy shop called The Corner of Knit and Tea, where I sell my handspun yarns and knitting patterns. Hi, how are you? It is Monday, March 27th. I can hardly believe we are in the last week of March. This month has just flown by. I guess I've just been busy with a new job and lots of knits going on. I've been getting things off the needles and working on some sample projects, and the big event of this past weekend was the Knit for Food Knitathon. Thanks to those of you that supported me. There were a few of you that donated, and it was lovely. All together, we raised $340,000, which is absolutely amazing. Every penny of that gets divided between the 4 charities we support, which are Feeding America, World Central Kitchen, Meals on Wheels, and Team No Kid Hungry. Yes, I remembered all 4 of them. I am super thrilled. That means we're going to send each of them about $85,000, which is nothing to sneeze at. We had over 6,000, 6,100, 6,200 donors this year. Just for reference, when I participated last year, we raised $271,000. So we increased by almost $70,000 this year, which is just freaking amazing. We did have some superstar fundraisers who, knitters you may know, who fundraised and brought in tons and tons of money, way more than I did. But it was fun to fundraise for such a great cause. And then yesterday we sat and knitted for 12 hours, and wow, that's a lot of knitting. And also, I did not finish as much as I thought I did. You know, I pull out everything, pull out all the stops, and then I did not get quite as many things done as I thought I might. But I do have lots of things to show you today and to talk about, so let's dive in. I am drinking coffee today. I needed a little bit of an extra kick, so I made some coffee this morning. I am drinking it in my Dirty Birds mug, which are birds with questionable names, and such as the Andean cock of the rock, the woodcock, the blue-footed booby, the southern screamer, some of those kinds of things. This was a lovely gift sent to me by a friend, and today I'm drinking vanilla hazelnut coffee. And it is delicious. You know, it's interesting. I realize that I've been drinking coffee a lot more recently. For a lot of years, I had a lot of trouble drinking coffee. It upset my stomach really badly, and I'm not sure what has changed, but now I can handle it. Also, I tend to make coffee in the afternoons now. I can't drink coffee first thing in the morning when I don't have any food in my stomach. It's just too acidic. But by the time I have breakfast and lunch in me, a cup of coffee in the afternoon is really nice. So I have not been drinking tea as much, and I know it's the Corner of Knit and Tea, but I hope you'll forgive me for that, and I will try and be more resolute about bringing fun teas to the table. I still do drink tea. It just kind of depends. Sometimes I'm just in the mood for coffee. And the thing about coffee that isn't quite like tea is coffee makes my kitchen smell so good. And half the time it's that my husband has developed a coffee habit since the fall. And so I'll walk into the kitchen and it smells like coffee, and it's so amazing, and it just makes me want coffee. And I think there's something, coffee is a little bit, well, because I put creamer in my coffee and I don't put milk in my tea, coffee's just a little bit kind of richer or sweeter. And I think in the mid-afternoon when I'm, you know, I'm kind of getting the munchies and, you know, finishing up my day and those kinds of things, I think sometimes that's a little bit of what I need to move on. Anyway, that is kind of the coffee, but I promise I'll bring more tea. So let's talk about the things that I finished this week. Technically, it's only one thing, but I finished my Christmas socks this week. So yes, I'm a little early or very, very late. I'm going to go with early because technically I cast these socks on Christmas Eve. They were part of my Little Bobbins Knits Christmas Eve cast on. They are hand-spun socks from Hello Yarn Fibers. They are Falkland, and the colorway was Not Crying, which is not a Christmas colorway, but when I saw it with all these golds and greens and reds, I thought it was super fun. So the socks are fraternal. On the first sock, I have all that glorious red up at the top and kind of the yellow and green, and you get a little bit more red in there, but nothing too strong. And then on this one, I have the red at the toe and then a little bit back up in the cuff, but not as strong as on this one. So they are definitely fraternal, but they do go together. And I'm really pleased that they're done, and they're done way in time for Christmas this year. Normally, I start my Christmas Eve cast on socks on Christmas Eve, and then I finish them the first week or two in January. And I don't remember precisely what happened here, but I think what probably happened is I had some samples that I needed to get started on, and so I knit the first sock, almost entirely the first sock, over the Christmas holiday while I was staying with my in-laws, and then I went back to work and went back to working on my samples and kind of put it aside. And when I came home from my trip, I had all these project bags on the couch next to me, and I pulled them out and was like, oh yeah, I never finished these. And so I took it upon myself to go ahead and finish these this month. So I'm pleased that those are done and off the needles and can be thrown in the drawer. And even though they are kind of Christmassy colors, I think I will probably wear them anytime. I love hand-spun socks, so I can kind of wear them anytime. We are getting into the summer months, so I may not be wearing like my hand-spun wool socks because they tend to be a little bit thicker quite as much, but I know that I will be happy for them come fall. So, and I should say, the pattern that I used for this is sort of a recipe. It's David Schultz's Toe Up Sock Cookbook. And basically what you do is you start at the toe, and you start with kind of a figure eight or Judy's Magic Cast on, and you work on your toe, and then once you have an inch or so, or, you know, once you have a chunk of your toe, then you can measure your gauge, and then you can calculate what you need for the rest of your sock based on your gauge. So I do like this because it means I don't have to gauge swatch. I just start with the toe, and I figure out roughly what I think I need, and it helps you calculate how many stitches you need for your sock, and then also you calculate your numbers. It's based on both your foot measurements and then of course your gauge, and then it is a toe up, gusset, and heel flap. And so I went ahead and did those, and I like to make my heel flap slip stitch, so that's just a slip one, knit one, or knit one, slip one, I can't remember. I think I start with a slip one, knit one, and then just go up through the end of the sock. And on the first sock, I was so excited to start the ribbing that I started it really early, and then I just kept going and going and going. So these have a really tall ribbing. I don't normally do that, but I don't know. It happened. I don't know. So I made the second one to match because they gotta match, right? So that's what I have there, and that's how I did that. And actually, I will tell you, oh no, it's not on this one. I will tell you a funny story when I get to the next one. Okay, so those are my finished socks. That is the only thing I have finished. So yesterday for the knitathon, and actually I finished those before the knitathon, I finished those on Saturday. So for the knitathon, I chose to work on 3 projects. 2 of them are whips and samples and things that I should be working on, and then one of them was a charity project. So the first thing that I did is I knit up some rectangles for my chicken making. And for those of you who haven't been here before, I work with a local art studio called the Chicken Girl, called the City Girl Farm. Sorry. City Girl Farm, and they make what are called they are the home of the original chicken footstool. And what these are chickens made out of wood and brass and wool, and they are art pieces that can also be used as footstools, but I think most people use them as art pieces. And I have been working with them for the last 2 or 3 years. It's quite different from everything that I do, and that's part of the reason that I love it. But I help them make the coverings for the chickens, which are hand spun and hand knitted sort of wool jackets and pieces that fit over the chicken that make them sculptural art pieces. And so part of what I did is I knit some pieces for that because I'm working on something for that, and I need to take that back this Friday to them. And then the second thing that I worked on is a work that I've had in progress for the last few weeks, basically since the beginning of March. Now, I did not get quite as far as I wanted to on it, but I did make some good progress yesterday. So this is called the Linen True Wrap. It's LINIENTREW, and the pattern is by Uta Narwatil, and all of that information is in the show notes over at thecornerofknitandtea.com. And this is a pattern that is sort of modular in the sense that you are working on it in triangles, and then you are adding some rows of shaping. So those of you who have been with me for a little while now will recognize this. The first part of the pattern was to knit these 3 triangles, and so you start with one triangle and then you kind of modularly build off of them, and then you work on the striped section, and then you work on a second triangular section. So I had hoped to have the second triangular section done by the time I came to you today. And when I started knitting yesterday, I had 3 triangles left on this section. And I got 2 of the triangles done, but not the third. It turns out that doing a triangle on this takes me about 2 hours. I don't usually time myself, but it was just kind of a thing that I looked up to see when I started and when I finished, and it was about 2 hours. And so I only got 2 of them done, so I still have 1 more triangle that needs to go on this side. So this is the wrap as it is now, and the triangles are a little bit, they're shaped, they're worked from the outside in, and the way they're shaped creates a slightly wonky triangle, and so they do not lay completely flat, but I believe that I will be able to get them to lay flat when I block. It's just kind of a weird thing right now. I think as soon as I dunk it in some water, it will lay flat and beautifully. And so I have 1 more triangle, which I hope to complete tonight, and then I have another stripy section to kind of finish out the shawl. And I think this will block out to be a decent size. At least right now, it's it's this far. It's from my hands to my shoulder, plus I will get a few more inches with another triangle, and then a few more inches with the striping. As you can see from the first one, I probably got, oh, I don't know, 4 to 6 inches of striping. So I should get a decent length, or a decent width, wingspan, once I block it. So I am knitting this out of 2 yarns from Zen Yarn Garden. This is a sample for them, and it is in their new glitter sock base, which is really exciting. That's not the right tag. Gosh, I do this all the time with you. So I will just say I am using their new superfine glitter base. I had 1 skein that was 400 yards in the colorway Au Naturel, so it's just the natural undyed, and it's really hard to see the stellina in this. This is a 90% superwash merino and a 10% stellina. So, and it's really hard to see it on the white, but you'll be able to see it on the color. So I am also using a gradient cake, which is 680 yards. I haven't weighed the cake, and now I'm actually most of the way through the cake, so you won't be able to see it too much. I have another cake, and I think I'm probably just going to need to break into it to finish this, but I don't know precisely. So this is what's left of my cake. The cake was called Inferno. It had lots of orange at this, well, okay, so it had an orange section before the red and the black, and then it actually reversed back into the center. So basically I started with black, went to red, then orange, a whole lot of orange, and then red, and then black. And you can see that's kind of how that is. And I guess it's a little bit black, a little bit brown. So you can see kind of the black brown up here, and then you can see the red section, and it flows into the orange. And as you can see, my triangles get more and more orange, and now I'm kind of flowing back in and out, and I'm back into sort of the red section. So I have 1 more triangle to do this evening, and then the stripes, and by the time I come to you next, this should be done. So I'm really pleased with how it's coming out. At this point, I basically more or less have the pattern memorized. I've also figured out a better way to do things. I will say, for instance, like picking up the triangles right here, it was a little bit difficult. So I figured out a better way to do that. You can see as I moved on, I got better at that. But I can also I'm just going to take some yarn and go ahead and close that up when I'm done. I'll just use some waste yarn on the back and close out that hole, just tighten that up just a little bit so it will be fine. And then, like I said, I just have the striping. So I'm very excited about this. One of the things that I'm most excited about is that I think it looks really good. It's not that I didn't think it was going to look good. The pattern calls for very short color repeats in yarn. So something like Knitpicks Chroma, or possibly even Noro, or a Zauberball. Those kinds of things were what they used to make these triangles. And so there was lots of color movement in here. And I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about the shawl in one kind of long gradient that takes longer, but I actually think it worked out fine. Mostly my concern was that in the big set of triangles, that the colors were going to shift so much that it was going to make a really odd looking scarf. But I don't think that has actually happened at all. I mean, they are darker on this side than they are on this side, but I don't think it looks terribly unbalanced. And I think when I get the border on there, which is, you know, mostly the darker edges of this one, and then if I need to bring in from another cake, I'll be starting from the outside or the inside, but it will just repeat itself. So I think the border is going to be very like black, brown, red, and the orange is just going to kind of be in the center. So I think that's going going to be really, really nice. And I'm looking forward to having this one done. So I have 2 more shawls waiting in the wings as samples. And at this point, I'm moving at about 1 a month. So I would really like to finish this one. I don't think I'll get it done before Friday, which is the 31st, but that is a goal. So there you go. Okay, so I talked to you about the 2 projects that I worked on. The chicken patches, which I didn't bring with me because they're just in white yarn and they're not very exciting. It's white garter stitch and then white loopy stitch, and I can bring them with me another time, but like I said, they're just not super exciting this time. So the 3rd project that I worked on is I decided to go ahead and cast on for my yellow socks. I embarked on a project at the beginning of this year to knit a rainbow of socks for Knit the Rainbow, which is a charity that supports LGBTQIA. Sorry for my mind just blanked on the acronym for a moment. And youth that are facing homelessness, particularly in New York, Minneapolis, and Chicago, because that is where they are now, but they are growing and adding locations around the country. So I have been working on socks for them. You may remember in January I knit a pair of red socks, in February I knit a pair of orange socks, and now it was time to knit yellow socks. So I bought a skein of yarn for the red and orange. I had some things in stash that I had purchased. I did not have any yellow in stash, so what I did is I bought a skein of Dream in Color Classy. This is a superwash merino. It is 100% superwash merino, 250 yards per skein, and the colorway is called Sundance, which I think really looks like buttered popcorn. It's kind of like a pale butter yellow, and then it's got bits of like a darker yellow in it, and when I knit it up, it really reminded me of popcorn. So let me just grab my sock blocker here so I can show you. This is going to look ridiculous because what I did is I am using the barley socks. Sorry, not the barley socks. I'm using the rye socks from Tin Can Knits sort of as my pattern approximator. That is a free pattern for socks sized baby all the way through adult. And what I have been doing is I have been using that to sort of pull my rough cast on numbers, because those socks are knit in worsted weight and I'm knitting mostly in DK or light worsted. And I use them for foot length because, so I have small feet. I have size 6.5 feet, which means I always knit the size small in socks. And that's great for me because I know exactly what that is, but I haven't a clue what it would be for larger socks. I mean, I can usually guess that you're going to add often multiples of 4 or 8 stitches to make the socks bigger around, but I have no idea how long to go for the socks. So I have been using the rye pattern to for measurements. Also, I have been using the pattern that I talked about before, David Schultz's Toe Up Sock Cookbook, because I have wanted to use up every last spare inch of yarn. So when I decided to make these socks, I decided to make them DK or worsted weight because they are going to people who potentially do not have shelter in cold weather, and I wanted to be sure that they were nice and warm and toasty. Also, I figured that would help me knit 6 or 8 pairs of socks faster, and I could do 1 a month and have them ready to send in the fall when it gets cold again. So that's why I've been knitting sort of worsted weight socks. So what I have been doing is I have been using the Toe Up sock recipe so that I can use up every last inch of the yarn. And that helps me because when I start at the toe, I can figure out my gauge. I can knit my foot as long as I need it to be, which I use the rye pattern for. Then I can do my gusset and heel flap, and then I can continue up the leg, and I can basically knit until I run out of yarn, starting my ribbing at what I hope is an appropriate length from the top. So that's just an eyeball thing. On the first sock, I look at it and go, I think I should start ribbing now. And actually on this sock, I got a little more ribbing than I probably needed, but it's fine. So this sock looks a little silly because, again, I have a short sock blocker because I have a small size foot, and this one is incredibly long. And to be honest, I think it might be a little too long. I think I might not have measured quite correctly. I might have had more on my heel than I meant to, but I'm leaving it because sometimes people who don't have homes have really big feet. So I figure it's going to fit someone, and I just won't knit this as long next time. I mean, obviously I'll knit the second sock the same length as the first, because the foot looks ridiculously long to me, but I do know that there are men out there with really big feet. So, and everybody deserves socks. So I'm just going to kind of show you with the sock on here as I can. this is what I ended up with. I know it's too long. I know that I was supposed to have about an 11-inch, an 11 1/4 inch long foot in total. And looking at this, I probably have 12. So, yeah, I definitely did not do that right. But I decided not to pull it back. I just decided to keep going because I had a little trouble with this sock, and I will explain that in just a minute. So again, I used my toe-up sock recipe. It's just kind of a rounded toe, a long foot, a gusset, and heel flap. And on this heel flap, you'll notice that I just knit it. And I think that's because I had to do this multiple times. More about that in a second. And then I did my cuff, and then I did my ribbing. And as I said, I started my ribbing a little too soon. I ended up probably with almost 2 inches of ribbing, but that's fine. So this is a nice cheery sock. I'm going to knit another one to match it. Hopefully there will be someone with feet who will fit this size sock. I can't really go out. I mean, I wish I could, but I can't. I suppose I could cut the toe and then graft on. The problem is that since I knit it from the toe up, I would have to like rip back, and I would have to rip back through my heel. And that was the part that I was, I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. I may end up ripping this out. But this was the sock that I knit yesterday. So the problem is I decided to kind of work before I played. So I knit all my whips in the morning when my brain was fresh. And then, oops. That's funny. Put that down so I don't impale myself. So then I decided to start my socks mid-afternoon when I was already tired. So I started the socks, and like I said, I did the math, and I calculated how much it should measure from toe to where I started the heel gusset. And that was where I erred because my heel gusset and flap are like way longer than I thought they were going to be. I measured a different one and kind of went off that, but the yarn is a little bit different. It wasn't as stretchy, I think. So I got more. I think my extra inch actually came in the back part of the heel. So theoretically, I could rip back to where I started the gusset and rip back an inch and do it again. And anyway. So I was knitting these toe up, as I said, and the way that so when you knit a sock top down and you want to do a heel flap and a gusset, you start at the cuff and you knit down, and then you create your heel flap. You go back and forth over the back set of stitches and create your heel flap, and then you do your little heel turn, and then you pick up stitches along the side of your heel flap, and you decrease stitches on your gusset going down the foot. So if you're going in the opposite direction, you start with the gusset stitches, and you increase, so you have them here, and then you turn your heel at the bottom, and then you work back and forth in short rows to kind of fill in this heel flap and remove all the extra stitches from your gusset. So they're kind of opposites of each other. And I will tell you what I did last night is I went ahead and got to the point where I was ready to start my gusset, and I went ahead and knit my heel flap, and then I turned my heel, and then I tried to decrease my gusset. So more or less what I did was I knit a top-down heel in a toe-up sock. And while this may not be a huge issue in the way that I have knitted here, because I've knitted in the stockinette, I actually knit the heel flap in my slip one knit one. So basically this piece was on the bottom of the foot, which would not be terribly comfortable if one was wearing that. So I had to rip out the heel, and then I did the heel again, and then honestly, even when I started to pick up the stitches, even when I finished the heel flap and started to pick up the stitches for the cuff, I was like, wow, that foot is really, really long, and Wes was like, that looks way too long, and I ignored it and finished it as I am wont to do, and now I'm probably going to end up picking this one back. But I still have the other sock to do, so maybe I'll do the other sock first, and then I'll go back. So because I can use this sock as a model for this sock, and yeah. Okay, so that's the idea of what I'm going to do. I knit half a sock. I'll probably end up redoing it. This will probably not end up getting finished this week because I already have other things to do, so it will bleed into April, but that's okay. And I don't have my green sock yet, so my green sock yarn yet, so I will have to see. There is a spinning and knitting convention here next month, so maybe I will just wait in its ply away. The spinning conference is coming back. It is probably its final year in the Midwest, and it is the weekend of April 22nd and 23rd, and I know a few of you are coming to town for that. I am not taking classes this year for two reasons. One is the class that I really wanted sold out immediately. And the second is that I just started a new job, so I was not sure that I wanted, and not all of the classes, there are classes on Saturday, but most of the classes are during the week, and I was not sure that I wanted to take time off during the week with my new job. So I am going to be taking a little time off. I'll go hit the vendor market and see some friends, and so maybe I'll just buy a skein of green yarn there, local to me. I think that's a good idea, which gives me a little bit more time to finish these yellow socks. So that is what's what's on the needles and coming up on the needles. So quick sip of coffee. I will talk for just a moment or two about spinning, and then I'll let you get back to it. So spinning. This past week I was spinning a braid of Hello Yarn from October's Club. It is called Double Double Toil and Trouble, and it is really kind of fall Halloween colors. It's purples and oranges and lots of fall colors, and as you can see, I did not ply. Normally I would have plied yesterday at knit night, and I was just too tired by the time I got on knit night. I was still finishing up doing some knitting for the knitting marathon, which ran till 9 o'clock last night, and then when I was done I was too tired to do anything else. So that is the project for this week. This will probably get done tomorrow or Wednesday, and then I do have new fiber to spin, and actually I just picked this up this week. My local yarn store carries some of Kim Dye's fiber. Kim Dye's Yarns. It carries some of her fiber, and this is her fiber of the month, which I can't remember what the title is. This is called City Rainbow. So every month, Kim from Kim Dye's Yarn dyes two special local yarn store colorways of the month. And so she started this during the pandemic because she was trying to work with yarn stores to sell her yarn and give the yarn stores some business. So every month she designs two colors that are exclusive to yarn stores, and the yarn store often takes pre-orders, and then she ships the yarn towards the end of the month, and you get your monthly yarn colors. And she offers two colors on usually the same base, but it's not the same base every month. So your two colors are both on the same basis. So for instance, if she's offering on fingering weight, both colors will be on fingering weight that month. If she's offering DK weight, both colors will be on DK. Basically, so you can coordinate them for projects. And this month, I think some months, but I'm not sure I've seen it every month, but maybe I just haven't been paying attention. Many months, she will dye her colorways on fiber as well, and my local yarn store does have a spinning group, and so they stock up on fiber. So this is City Rainbow, which is just some rainbow colorways and some grays and lots of white. I think it will be really pretty. I don't know that it will be super pastel, because it does have like some of these bright splotches of pink in here, but I think this will be kind of soft and a fun spin, and this is on 75% BFL, 25% Tussa Silk, so this will be a nice one. BFL doesn't give a ton of yardage for me, but this will be nice, and it's very soft. It would be very nice next to your skin if you wanted a hat or mitts, and this will be going into the shop. So that is the spinning content for this week. I should have more for you next week, at least one skein of finished yarn, and then we'll see how far I get on that one. And maybe I'll even have a couple other whips for you, or finishes for you. I don't know for sure, but gosh, I really hope so. So I hope that you had a wonderful weekend, that you are off to a good week. My weekend was a whirlwind. I think I could probably use another weekend, but we'll just do our best to get through this week. Next weekend is the Easter holiday. For those of you who celebrate, I hope you enjoy it. We actually do not celebrate, so for me, it is a weekend when everyone else is often busy, and that means that I can just relax, which I am looking forward to. So I hope you have a wonderful week ahead, that you have some crafty mojo and are enjoying the changing weather, no matter where you live. And I will talk to you again soon. I will say, as I always do, happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sipping, and I'll see you next time. Bye.